Okay. Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Mary Helen Hensley, and we are going to hear about her amazing near-death experience. Hi, Mary.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. So you can just jump right in if you want.
Jump right in. Well,
Jump
I'm
right in.
talking to you from Ireland, where I have lived for the last 22 years. I am from Virginia originally, and I have been in Ireland practicing chiropractic and metaphysical healing, for over 2 decades now. So, yeah, that's greetings from Ireland, everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, do you want me to just talk about my story?
Just
Well,
go
it's a
for
very
it.
special day for me, actually, because today is the 5th birthday of Promised by Heaven, which was actually a culmination of my first 3 books, Promised, Circles of Light, and The Land Beyond the River, which were stories about my life and my near-death experience in 1991. So we're excited to celebrate 5 years of that. The story's actually been out there since 2009, but when it was taken over by Simon & Schuster and condensed, today was its birthday. So yeah, now 10 books later, I've been traveling the world and literally shouting from the rooftops, trying to get people to enjoy their lives, let themselves off the hook, stop judging everything, stop thinking everything's supposed to be perfect and happy and wonderful all the time, that you're actually here to, to dive in and experience life as you created it for yourself. And so for me, that all started back in 1991. I had just graduated from college and I lived in South Carolina. And as any good Southern girl would tell you, if you're dating the same fella that you were dating in college, your mom's picking out the China patterns. So I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, where my beloved was from. And I was actually on my way to a Christmas party, and it was December 14th, 1991. And it's hot in Charleston in December. So I was wearing bright red Bermuda shorts and a Santa Claus t-shirt and a jingle bell around my neck. And I was on my way to the sign company that I was working for. So of course, having graduated with my big college degrees, I learned very quickly that the real world handed me a mop and said, you're going to start not from the bottom, because as I learned at that moment, every single job was important, and every single job was crucial to a functioning business. And so, yeah, I was delighted and on my way, and I was less than 2 miles away from my apartment when I hit a major intersection, which is called Highway 17. So it's, lots of lanes of traffic's coming this way and lots of lanes going this way. And so I was waiting at the red light, and I sat there for the duration of the red light. And then when my light turned green, I started off across the lanes of traffic here. Then I was going to be turning left towards town. So I'd made it through all of the lanes except for that last one. And I turned and I looked, and there was a car coming at me 75 miles an hour. And it was an elderly gentleman who was in his 80s. He had nearly killed a couple earlier in the summer. He shouldn't have been driving, but I'm glad he was, or I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about this. And he plowed through the red light and T-boned my car. So hit me side impact into the driver's side and folded my car in half. But this is where it got interesting, because as I turned and looked and saw the car coming, I knew in that moment I was dead. And it was such a familiar feeling, and it wasn't frightening whatsoever. Everything just slowed down. And this was when I realized for the first time in this lifetime that we're in complete control as to how we're experiencing this. And so I distinctly remember going, oh God, I've done this a million times. And I had a choice in that moment. Did I want to stay inside of my body and experience the impact for whatever gifts that had to unfold? Or did I want to go ahead and leave the body? And I chose option B, because I felt like I had been in the body before in the death process, and I didn't need to do that. So what was really cool was all of a sudden there was this sound. And I love hearing Irish music. And I'm a bodhrán player, which is the round Irish drum. But my favorite instrument is the uilleann pipes. And the uilleann pipes are the elbow pipes, and they make this fabulous drone as they're filling the bag with the air. So there was this sound that I would liken to the pipes. And there was a drone in the background. And all of a sudden, with that sound, I was no longer in my body in the car. I was above and looking, and everything sped up. And then the accident took place. So I actually witnessed my own death. So this was really interesting. And so, many years later, 30 years later, nearly, you come to realize that the drone, the sound, the frequency was what was keeping my essence, me, the I am, the soul, tethered to the physical plane. And so I was able to come up and out and witness, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to talk about it in the future, I guess, and see this happen. So I watched his car plow into the side. My head went through the driver's side window and my neck broke. And the seat folded up underneath me. There was glass shattering everywhere and all sorts of fun stuff. And I looked like a little puppet just hanging there, strapped to the seat. And it's really interesting, Peggy, because this is when most people are like, well, what was it like leaving the body? And I'll tell you exactly what it was like, because I think people get this idea that you're pining away. Oh my God, my life is over. I've just left. When you suddenly realize that you've been driving the bus the entire time, and that amnesia lifts just like that. I look back at the body that's sitting there pinned in the car and dead, and me, who I really am, I would liken it to coming in after being out in the garden all day, doing gardening, mowing the lawn. You're hot, you're sweaty, you're sticky. And you come in the back door and you peel off those gross clothes and you throw them down next to the washing machine. And then you go get in the best shower ever. And you're just washing off all the muck and the grime, and it's just glorious. The very last thing you're thinking about is the dirty clothes sitting next to the washing machine. And that is what it's like leaving a body. Your memories are still intact, everything that you've just done. You're in that shower thinking about the beautiful work you've just done out in the garden. You're not criticizing yourself. You're just absorbing all that has just been. And that's the best way I can describe what it's like leaving the body. And so as I watched the accident unfold, and then, the car came to a halt, and people began to gather, and I realized that a girl I'd gone to college with was a few cars behind me, and it was a big town. She just happened to be there. And I saw somebody come up to the car and reach through the passenger side. All the windows had blown out, and turn the engine off. And he was in a uniform. And so once that happened, that sound, that low drone that was keeping me tethered, probably between 30 and 50 feet above myself, all of a sudden it changed. And I call this the music of the spheres. It was the most incredible music. You've never heard anything here like it. It was just extraordinary. And all of a sudden I was becoming those sounds. They were me. It was coursing through every bit of who I was. And I am now no longer looking at my dead body in that car. I'm gone. Whoosh. And I think this is where people have the tunnel of light experience. Mine was really fast, so I missed the tunnel. But that idea of that transitioning from being tethered to the earth plane into that next space, that's where I think that tunnel happens for people. So there I am in a change of scenery in the most glorious colors and sounds, and I was part of that atmosphere. So, how do you explain being in all places at once? You can't. That's exactly what it was like. You suddenly are, all you're doing is going, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And you realize that you've suspended what reality is in order to come into what we're calling reality here to play this game. And people are like, why would you do that? The very same reason you'd sit down with a group of kids and you would temporarily suspend reality as you're being handed a silver shoe and this one's being handed a silver dog, and you're sitting around a game of Monopoly where $500 bills are pink and you could actually buy Park Place. you temporarily suspend what you know to be true in order to have the experience, the camaraderie, the fun, the competitiveness of playing that game, the growth, just the being. And so this is why we do this to ourselves. We come here to experience ourselves. We're all just fractals of the same whole. I am you, you are me, you're interviewing me, I'm interviewing you, do you know? And we're just we're just wearing different faces, but we're coming from that same energy. And so as we've shattered into millions of pieces, everything that I do, say to you, saying to myself, and you might be having a different, complete experience than I've had. But that part of me is having that experience. And this is where that illusion of separation comes in. When we actually go out of our way to cause harm to other people, not realizing that we're actually interacting with elements of ourselves. But it's an illusion that we create just the same as we do when we're playing games. And so it was pretty incredible to land in that space and remember all of that all at once. And I guess the most incredible part that happened for me, the one that really sticks with me, is because my memories of this, it wasn't just the feeling of love, which, to be quite honest, for people who are near-death experiencers and all they can talk about is the love that they felt, it's really kind of the name of the game, isn't it? That's all it is. You can sit and talk for an hour about love, and really that is what it is. I just came back with this really detailed memory of how that love unfolded. And what was really interesting for a preacher's daughter from the South, I grew up in the Bible Belt. My father's a minister. So from the first bang in that car, nothing was like I had been told to believe it was going to be. It was so much more expansive, so much more all-inclusive, so much bigger, so much better. And it, immediately I dropped other people's perceptions of who and what we are and stepped back into that knowing space of what we really are. And so as I landed into that color and light and space, I just basked in it for a while. And then there were these two beings that took shape and came forward out of that atmosphere. And it took a little while, and they were very patient as I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, these are my guardians. Oh my gosh, we have guardians. We're never, ever, ever alone. As much as you might think it, as much as you might think you feel it, as much separation as you choose to believe in, we're never, ever, ever alone. And there they were. And they'd been with me since the first spark of my own creation. And it was the best feeling in the world, knowing that they knew me, they knew everything about me. It was just the most beautiful homecoming. But what they had showed up for was my review. So yes, guys, there is a life review, but this is where it gets really cool. I am in this space. There are no enclosures, but it feels enclosed. And it was like I was in a 360-degree cinema. And so this is where the illusion of time just imploded for me. Because I'm looking around, first of all, I'm like, I thought we were supposed to get judged at this part. And there's nobody judging me. I'm the one watching myself. I am the one who is going, oh, I could have done that a little better, but this was cool. I'm critiquing my own performance like a critic, but not like a judge, as in there's no outcome of do I get to go up or down, because there is no up or down. It's just all encompassing. And so I am now aware that I'm watching myself getting lost on the beach at 5 years old. At the same time, I'm winning Living History Day in junior high at the age of 12. At the same time, I'm getting my driver's license at 16. At the same time, I'm too drunk to save myself from a rape at 18. It's all happening at the same time. And I'm all of these things and none of these things simultaneously. And anything that you've ever held yourself hostage with, anything that you couldn't let go of, or that you mistakenly identified yourself with because this happened to you or you did this or whatever, is gone. And you suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I set myself up to go in and have these experiences. And this is where people go, why in the hell would we do that? If we come from this beautiful space of perfection and, oh, it's so amazing, like you try to describe it, why would you leave that and come into a limited 5 senses 3D experience? And I'll tell you exactly why. We've all just gone through this pandemic. There were a whole lot of big screen TVs bought during the last couple of years because people were at home and they were watching their Netflix and they were doing everything that they used to do out at home. So you got a big screen TV, you've got your refrigerator full of food, families around, you've got a remote control, you can pause that movie, go to the bathroom when you feel like it. That's pretty cool. You're in control of that experience. You're watching what you want to watch. Now, pandemic ends and your best friend calls you. Oh my gosh, guess what's out? And you're like, what? Because you guys used to love to go to the cinema. And your best friend calls and you meet for the very first time at the cinema. And you walk in and boom, you're immediately hit with the smell of buttery popcorn and sweets in the air. And you walk into this stadium seating and there's this giant silver screen. And then the music starts and your heart's pumping. And there's that film. And the guy over here is sniffling, trying to hide his tears, or you're laughing out loud together collectively with a group of people. Which one is the better experience?
I like the movies.
Where you're me personally, it would be the movies, but for other people, they're in heaven at home. And so they're just two different ways to experience the same information. There isn't one that's better than the other because we'll never collectively agree on that, because we all have different purposes, different agendas, different things that we want to experience. Some people love the safety of the confines of their own home. Other people can't wait to get out the door and be out in the public, in the world, you know? Mm-hmm. So this was really cool. So you're in that space and you realize, oh my gosh, this is why I did this. I needed to go and experience this. If you picture yourself as a little scientist inside of a little meat wagon, you know, made of stardust, and you're coming here, it's kind of hard to judge yourself for not meeting last month's light bill, or that you made a bad relationship choice, you know, like, come on. So I have been trying to get people to understand you are in control of this whole thing. You created this whole thing for yourself. You've got nothing to lose. Go do it all, or go do nothing. Do what you feel like you need to do while you're here. But for whatever you do, don't spend the whole time in one emotion. So when we go, everything's all happy and positive, and no, that's not realistic. And that's not why you choose to become a human. Do you know? Everybody didn't come here for the happy ending and the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the, you know, West Highland Terrier. You know, some people came here for the drama. Some people came here for that moment of forgetting who and what they really are and forgetting their own worth and value. And we try so hard to pull people out of that all the time when we're not thinking maybe they needed to experience that in order to create the next step along the journey. And if we could all remember to go and just live wholeheartedly and fully in our own experiences and mind our own business and tend our own gardens and stop worrying about what the next guy does, because there are none of us who are ever going to live within a criteria that's perfect for all of us. It just doesn't work. And the earth plane isn't set up that way. It's kind of like when we come in, you know, when people are like, I want world peace. Guess what? Spoiler alert, guys, never happening. Okay. Earth is not like that. That's not why we came here. That's the same as if you want to become a Michelin, you know, star chef, and that you go to the gates of Harvard and you're like, let me in. I want to learn to cook. And they're like, but we teach law here. Well, I want to go to this school and I want to learn how to cook, but we teach law here. And you pitch a fit and you're banging on the doors and you're like, but I want to do. When we come here and we try to change the earth plane, it never works out in our favor. And we recycle, you know, because we're here to change within the confines of what earth has to offer, not the other way around. We think we have to save the planet. We have to save these and this and that. No, not realizing that it was about us coming in here in the illusion that we were already perfect, just like we are, that we already are that which we seek. And so when I had fully immersed back into the experience of remembering this, I decided to go back. Now I have, you know, I'm on the near-death circuit and, you know, speak with all sorts of really fun people. And I have as many colleagues who did not want to come back And I acknowledge that. I've always been the rah-rah cheerleader type. I couldn't wait to get back here and tell everybody. And I have other friends who went into very deep, dark depressions when they had to come back in here, realizing, oh my God, that wasn't real. And it was so painful. I'm so grateful that I look at pain differently. I really can see the gift in all things. And I realize that every person, no matter what our encounter is coming there with an offering for me. It's up to me to act or react in whatever way I see fit. But I do know that there are a lot of people who really struggled coming back here. I just wasn't one of them. I came back. I was so happy to be back in my body, as smashed up as it was, and to go through with the challenge. I wake up every single day. I have pain every day of my life. I broke my neck. I smashed my body up, but I've also done a lot. I've climbed many mountains. And the way that I did that was every morning to this day, I wake up and I go, is the pain I'm in, whether it's physical or emotional, bigger than what I want to accomplish today? And the answer is 99% of the time, no. And so I get up, I stretch myself out, and I go out there and I do what I came here to do. And anyone out there who has children recognizes and realizes it's not about being happy all the time. It's not about having all the right answers all the time. It's not about being perfect all the time. It's about the struggle and not being the enemy of the struggle, because the struggle is inevitable to the human condition. Does that mean everything has to be crap all the time? No. It means that we ride the wave and that we sit in that space and that we absorb every experience. And if we'd stop judging the experiences as good or bad, as light or dark, it takes light and dark threads to weave the beautiful tapestry. So if we can remember that as we plug through our daily lives, and that interaction that didn't feel so good, or that really nasty thing that person did, or that lovely compliment, or that lovely email that we got, all of those are just things. And if we'd stop delineating them as good or bad things, as opposed to experiences, it makes the living here an awful lot easier. And so I've spent the last 30 years coming back here trying to tell people, you already are that which you seek. Go out and do it all. Take the risk. Do whatever it is you think you came here to do. And this has been a perfect time for that in this pandemic, for people who are petrified. I'll tell you this, the same as anything else out there. If COVID was lethal to everyone, then everyone who had COVID would be dead. If smoking gave cancer to everyone who smoked, then everyone who ever smoked would be dead of cancer. We all have different stories. We all have different paths to unfold. And that's the biggest takeaway from having gone through a near-death experience, is understanding that, I'm here for me, and you are me, and I am you. And I am here to contribute to my own growth and understanding. I'm here to experience all things, regardless of whether they feel good or don't. And that I find love and value in all of those things. So here I sit all these years later, still doing my thing.
So what did you see as far as the visual part from, I know you saw out of body, you saw the accident happening, but once you got into, I call the heavenly realm, I don't know what you call, what did you actually see? I know what you thought, what you processed about it, but like the two guides, what did they look like? What did the scenery look like?
Well, there wasn't any scenery as much as if I could try to get you to visualize what it would look like to see music. So I'm synesthetic. The reason I do the healing work that I do is because I can actually, after coming back from that experience, I can be in a situation and I can hear the pitch of, let's say, the virus COVID, right? I can hear a brain tumor. Everything has a frequency to me. I can hear someone's suicidal tendencies. Therefore, I've learned how to manipulate and change those frequencies in a way that someone, if they choose to do so, can heal themselves and keep rocking on in this life. Some people choose it and some people don't. So if I could try, it's like what does yellow taste like? Do you know, it's trying to describe that environment. It's the best way I can describe is, you know, there weren't buildings or there weren't other people. There were those guides that actually took shape out of the atmosphere. The clothing that they wore, I'm sure was for my benefit, because why would you need clothing? Do you know? And they looked familiar. I happened to love old people as long as I can remember. I have loved the elderly. I would have picked sitting in a nursing home, hanging out with elderly people than playing with my friends when I was a kid. So it stands to reason that the two elderly gentlemen dressed in the caramel colored robes with that pearly-escent sheen would come in a way of something that I held dear. And I held the elderly very dear. So that's how they came to me. So these two in particular were male, you know, as far as the energy behind them. Did they need to be dressed? No. Were they actually male? No. But that was the way. Remember, you're just transitioning. That your soul is coming out of being stuck inside the meat suit for however long, and you're coming out of that, and they're doing everything they can to make this a more comfortable transition for you. So I think that's why they look that way. So really it was, what was I seeing? Color and sound.
Okay.
Now the idea of moving into the 360 theater, what I was seeing next was my entire life playing out simultaneously. And so this is what's so fascinating, because on the earth plane, we're taught to believe in a chronological or linear time. And what this space provided was the idea to see concurrent time, that everything is happening simultaneously, that I am 2 years old.
Out at it like you were watching a movie screen, or was you this point of reference, or was you in it, involved in it?
I was in the center of it.
Okay.
Yeah, in the center of it. It was happening around me. And it's so hard to vividly describe to someone, like, you're part of all of it. It's like a projection of yourself. Do you know? Okay. My friend, who's probably the foremost researcher in the world of near-death experiences, PMH Atwater, she is a dear, dear friend, and she had a picture that she showed me once of when she was doing her a book about children and their near-death experiences. And there was a little fella who she had asked to draw his experience. And he had been raised, I don't know where he was from, but he had been raised in, you know, within the parameters of the Christian religion. So that was his only point of reference as a young child. And his picture that he drew of his near-death experience, I think after drowning, was so extraordinary, because in the paper there at the bottom corner, there was this little bitty box, and there was a little cross inside the little bitty box. And the rest of the page was just yellow beams of light. And his young mind, what he was trying to say was, this is so small and this is so confining. It's not that it's wrong, but there's so much more than this. And that's the feeling, guys, there's so much more. And if you can even cling to that feeling, you don't have to live like that every day, because then that negates your reason for being here. So my life has been kind of weird because I never lost the memory. So my role here as a human being changed. I became a supporter, a teacher, someone who's there assisting people through those very dark moments where they completely detach and forget, and are dangerously close to ending their experience here because they can't remember why they came in the first place. And I spend a lot of time doing that. And so it's so amazing to watch somebody grasp that for a second. And so all the work that I do in frequency now, which is, you know, my life's work, is because it bypasses this. When we're out of body, we don't communicate that way anyway. Everything is a feeling and a knowing. And so I use frequency to take people. It's like taking someone who's hysterical and going, smacking them across the face, going, wake up. And they go, oh! And they stop that hysterical reaction, that fight or flight panic that they're in, regardless of what the circumstances they're panicking about are, whether it's a physical problem or an emotional problem. and you're boom, using frequency to get them across the face, and they go, and there's no words needed. It's a feeling. You remind them temporarily what it feels like to be who they really are. And then they stop and they take a breath. And then they realize, oh, okay. They don't have to know all the details. They don't have to know all the everything. They just have to connect with that feeling again. And once they connected with that and they get that moment of reconnection, they don't have to stay connected. They don't have to go on and die. They can finish what they came here to do without the constant chronic anxiety and worry. And if they've become so anxious that they've become ill, they're then presented with the opportunity to turn that back around, because the human body can heal from anything. For some people, and for other people, it doesn't. And that too is part of their experience. So my job, really, I'm a glorified window washer. I'm just wiping the windows clean so that people can see out for themselves and remember why they came here in the first place.
Would you mind telling the story about your dad when he passed? I listened to that last night, and that was amazing. I just love it.
It's one of my favorite moments as a human being in this body. So guys, I said to you before, my father was a minister, from in his early 20s until he died in his late 80s. So we were Southern Baptist. He was interesting though, because people loved to come listen to his sermons because there was no fire and brimstone. He wasn't that kind of preacher. My dad was also a football coach. And so people loved coming in on a Sunday because the sermon was going to have something to do with Friday night's football game. And he had this wonderful booming Southern voice, and he was able to tell a story that captivated people and relating it to their everyday lives, as opposed to
I love it
just
when you talk like him.
Sugar, that's what he said. Sugar. That's our kitchen table talk. Our first serious conversation about life and death happened when I was 4. And he sat me down at the kitchen table and he said, Sugar, do you know the difference between alive and dead? And this was because I was talking about my grandfather, who'd been dead since I was 1. And my father was always on pins and needles waiting for what was going to happen next. But so he would be in the pulpit and he's talking about, Friday night football games and how this related to the parables of Christ. And, he was a good storyteller and people enjoyed his sermons. And so, but he was very disciplined. He was it doesn't matter. He gets it. Obviously he's not in the body anymore, but for him to carry out the path that he felt like he needed to do here, he never drank, he never smoked, he never swore. He was in the gym every single day of his life. And I actually think that was for his mental health. It doesn't mean I think my father actually had clinical depression that never was diagnosed, but you would never known it by him because he made a choice not to impose that on other people. He dealt with it. And I don't mean that in a way, I can hear people now. What do you mean clinical depression is not it? Listen, if someone in a family has depression, the whole family has it. Live with somebody who has depression and see if it doesn't affect the entire family dynamic. So I don't say that as a criticism. I say it as an acknowledgement that we're in this together. It's like if a woman is pregnant, her husband's pregnant right along with her, So I actually think my father chose to use fitness as his coping mechanism for everything that he was dealing with. And he was doing some heavy work. He took on the mantle of being in the South in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and taking young men who would never have the chance to go to college because of the color of their skin and pushing them through via athletics and literally changing the dynamic of what was going on at the South at the time. And it was big. It was a lot of work. And it was something that he was so happy to do. But I think he felt that he had to be extremely disciplined in his own lifestyle in order to show up every day. So he was just this really cool, unique dude, right? So when he was dying with Alzheimer's, and when he had finally passed into the stage where he couldn't speak, months had gone by where he wasn't able to speak, and he was such a beautiful speaker. So that was kind of hard to watch because all he could do was blah, 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 he could babble. That was it. And so we were sitting in the nursing home, as we did all the time with him. the summer before he died. And he would shuffle. He was in that sundowners phase where he was angry, or he'd pull his pants down, or he'd try and hit somebody, or, that's all he could do. And he'd shuffle back and forth, but he would not lie down flat, which was so funny because guess what? He was terrified to die. So I'm like, this is mad. This guy dedicated his entire life to the word of God and what awaits us when we die. Yet it let him down in his final hours. I don't know what was missing there, only this moment that was to take place. And so one night we'd been in there, it had been a tough day, and my mom and I are sitting and my dad's shuffling all around the place. And all of a sudden he walks across the room and he gets into the bed and he lies down flat. And my mom was like, what's going on? And one of the things that I can do is I can see the energy field around people. And when people are passing away, you might think it would look like a dimmer switch going down. Total opposite. It's like fireworks popping off in the field as the soul is revving up to the body. And I'm looking, I'm going, yeah, no fireworks, Mom. I don't think he's dying right now. I think he's having an experience. So here's the man who hasn't spoken in months because he can't, lying down flat in the bed. Next thing, he reaches up to the ceiling. He's giddy. And he goes, I can see it. And we're like, he's talking. And I'm like, hey, Dad, what can you see? And he looks at me and he goes, it's the land beyond the river, sugar. And it's more beautiful than anything you ever wrote about. And we're like, what is going on? And so he's perfectly clear, perfectly coherent after not being able to speak for months. So he goes, oh my gosh, there's Mom. Oh, Mama looks so beautiful. She looks so young. And I was like, that's amazing, Dad. What else do you see? And then he just freezes and he's like a deer in headlights. And he goes, oh my gosh, Daddy's there. Now, according to my father's criteria of what it meant to be able to get to the land beyond the river, he was a hardcore disciplined man. His father didn't cut the mustard. And so he gets the shock of his life when he's looking at the land beyond the river and the mother he revered is standing there with the father he didn't. And he is like, what is going on here? Next thing, he just beams. He was radiant. And he turns to my mom. And now imagine, this man has been a minister for over 60 years. And he turns to my mom and he goes, Helen, I've had it wrong all along. You can't mess this thing up. Everybody's welcome here. And we're like, and so my mom leans over and she's like, write that down. And so of course it ended up in a book. And, but it for me was probably one of the biggest mic drop moments I've ever experienced, because that says it all. And I've had people go, well, so does that mean your dad's life was for nothing? Does that mean he wasted all of his time? And I'm like, no. Look at all the people he served. Look at all the people he helped. He was wearing that uniform at the time in order to live in the time period he came into, help these people through, do what he came here to do. But the gift was that while still in the body, he got to remember who and what he really was and what we all come here to do. And
I'm sure we all get it a lot wrong.
Oh yeah. Like, who wants to judge that? I'm like, if you steal a nickel or if you steal $5 million, you're still stealing, So who gets to delineate? Where's the cutoff point? Is it 350,000? Like, it's the intention. It's what we come here to do. So the idea of judging somebody, that's the whole point behind judge not, lest you be judged. Because guess what, folks? You're judging yourself. You're sitting in on your own party with the popcorn going, oh, look what I did there. So there's nobody who's going to judge you to determine whether you go up or down, because that space that we're doing that in is not a final destination like religion would have us believe. It is a space that we leave out of to go either further afield into a different realm or to come back into the earthly realm and experience something through a different set of eyes. That's how this works, folks. So there is no reason to get yourself all, don't get your panties in a twist over what you did or do or didn't do. Come here and do all of it. Does it mean that you go out of your way to intentionally be, malicious? No, because guess what? you're going to put yourself back into a situation where you rectify that at some stage. So you come here and you just absorb with utter gratitude what each and every experience has to offer you. And if somebody is really, getting your goat, if somebody is really bothering you, or if somebody is the bane of your existence, they're your bully, oh, my life would be so much better if they hadn't done X, Y, or Z. Sit back and take a breath for a minute, because that individual is bringing you a gift, because it's all about the way you act and react in that moment. It's not about that person or what that person did. It's about how you showed up for the gift that they brought to you. And that's very hard for some people to accept, especially when there's been, but what about me? I was raped, when I was 17, and, do I want it to happen to anybody else? It's part and parcel of my story. Does everybody have to go through that story? No. But I also don't cling to that like a victim. I have helped thousands of people because of that story. I learned and grew because of that story. I don't wear it as a badge of honor, I wear it as a badge of experience. It means no more or no less than the near-death experience that I had. It's just another experience. And so if people could step out of the trauma and the drama and realize that each of these things is building the foundation of who they are and what they are to become. And remember, some of those things that, you might have a child who's going through a tough time. They might need to be going through the tough time in order to become what they came here to be. So if there are psychological issues that, that your child is going through, because they're later going to be the person who turns around and helps others with those things. It's kind of like in school. It was really fun becoming a doctor and having had so many ailments because of the car accident, because I was like, oh, I had that. Oh, I know what that feels like. Very different than reading about it in a book. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's made me a really good doctor, because there's all, you'd be hard pressed to find any ailment that somebody comes into my office with that I haven't already had. And so I'm really grateful for that, rather than going, oh God, poor me, So, it's all about.
Yeah, it makes something you're saying there makes me think about when I was in 10th grade on the school bus. This big girl kept telling me every day she's going to beat me up when I got off the bus. And so every night I was scared. I was so scared when I was home. It's tomorrow day. She's going to beat me up. I'm so scared. And this went on for weeks. And finally I thought, I'm tired of living in fear. I want it over with. So the next day I had it in my head and I told her, when we got on the bus and she started her crap up again, I said, then do it. You do it today. If you don't do it today, I never want to hear that you're going to do it again. You're either going to do it or you're not. And she goes, I like you. You're cool. Anybody messes with her, they're going to mess with me. Oh, phew. But I had stress, but it made me a stronger person, because now I'm able to stand up to people. And I was not at all before. It took weeks and weeks of living with that fear. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? This is what it's going to be like when this happens. How bad is it going to be? And then finally it took that day of enough's enough. And by God, and I'm a tiny little thing, and I just stood up and I thought I would have never been able to become that person that stands up if it hadn't have been for all that.
And thank heavens for the bully.
Pardon me?
Thank heavens for the bully.
Yeah.
Because that bully was also somebody's daughter, probably somebody's sister, probably somebody's best friend. And what we've got to remember is that when we think somebody is the most horrible person in the world because of what they're doing to us, that's their story with us. You could have a couple who separates or who divorces, and they might think the other one is the worst in the world. And yet they go their separate ways. They go into their jobs, or they're interacting with their children, or they get a new partner who think that they're just the bee's knees, because that storyline is now complete. So their story with you wasn't necessarily to be the nicest person in the world. It was to do something that maybe gave you the courage to say, I've had enough and I need to leave. Or you don't get to do this to me. Or they might go on and have a suicide attempt, or they might get bankrupt, or they might, the list goes on and on. All it is doing is presenting an opportunity for you to experience something new and to show up for yourself.
So thank you so much for coming
My
on
absolute
today.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And it's so nice to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you.
I watched your video and I love the down home Southern, kick butt attitude because I'm Appalachian, so I really resemble that, and it's refreshing for
There
me.
you go. Well, thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
and send me the links when you're ready,
I
and I'll
will.
put it out.
I will. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Sorry about my sunspots or whatever it was earlier, but we got it in the end. Perfect timing.
It's fine. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.